What do you mean you don't hear God? And he's like, nobody hears God. And I'm like, God's always talking. Like, what do you mean you don't hear God? So to me, intuition is the language of the soul, right? That is, it's a string that connects us if you want to play it. They're showing me a vision. You know that the games of like you hold the cup, I'll hold a cup, and there's a string. It's like we're communicating. There's a communication, but the string can be so thin that maybe we're not perceiving it, but that communication is always at play. And a lot of times we hear this all the time, that when we get what we think we wanted, it's not what we really wanted. Right? Like then we go into regret, like, oh, like I wanted this whole time, and then you get it and it's like, crap, this is horrible.
Emily Rivera, welcome to the Hero Project podcast.
Well, thank you. I am so excited to be here and really, really looking forward to just seeing how this unfolds.
Me too.
So thank you.
Me too. So you are known as the Angel Coach. Mm-hmm. Can you describe what that title means? So coach is a word that gets thrown around a lot, and it does have its definition and its intention. And a lot of times it includes a certain framework. So the reason we use the Angel Coach is because inside of my coaching framework, it's very much guided. So it's me, the voice, the interpreter, let's say, but it is actually something that is guided by a higher presence, a higher source, which are the angels. So when I get to coach people, support people, offer insights and guide them through whatever it is they're going through, or support them move beyond what they're going through, it's very much guided. It's guided by the angels, which is why I'm known as the Angel Coach. So meaning that I am not just the coach, I am the interpreter for the angels who are coaching. The guidance, the voice, yes. The angels. You know, we live in a day and age where this is not so foreign to people. Mm-hmm. You know, this is a time of awakening. Mm-hmm. At what age did you realize that you had this gift? So that is a great question. The experience of the gift has been happening since I was a little girl. My first memory is probably when I was around 4 or 5, and it was this beautiful presence of light that was actually teaching me. And that's the first memory I have. You know, it was actually a family was having a gathering, and this presence woke me up, and I literally was sitting in bed, and this presence was teaching me about who and what I was, teaching me about my purpose, teaching me about what I need to remember. But it wasn't just that one teacher. It was like different nights in which I was having these experiences. And throughout my life, what I called God and call God, that presence, that voice, was guiding me. It guided me, you know, I'd be walking with my parents and I'd see somebody on the streets and I'd be guided to say certain things or be guided into understanding what they were going through. They would help me with my relationships with my cousins and my family, my parents, my siblings. And that just continued and evolved, I would say. So I got to understand the voice even more and with more clarity as I continued to get older. But it guided me for college. It guided me when I was going to get married. It guided me when I was going to have kids. So it pretty much guided me along the way. The thing that was interesting about this question is that I actually thought everybody heard the voice. Like I thought, you know, my parents heard it. I thought everybody, you know, strangers alike heard the voice. And it was just a voice that guided us every day. And then when I was in college, during one of a mission trip, I was part of a fellowship that we would do mission trips. And during a mission trip, we were out and about in a nightclub, and there's a gentleman we started talking to. And when we started talking to him, the voice said he is planning on killing himself at the end of the night. So I spoke to him about that. I said, hey, you know, so you want to take your life, and it's okay if you want to do that. But if you choose to stay, this is actually what I am seeing instead. And not necessarily that I was saying it was okay for him to kill himself, but it was like that along the lines. Like, hey, I know that this is currently your plans, and if you're open to it, there's another option. So I was shown visions of like he was going to get married, he was going to have a family, and truly feel on purpose with life. So I shared all that stuff. The gentleman started crying and pretty much admitted that, yes, that was his plan, to take his life at the end of the evening, which is why he was getting really drunk.
But after the message was delivered, he sobered up right away and he actually joined us. Well, later that evening, the person leading the mission was like, well, God doesn't talk to us like that. Like, how could you say that? That's not how God speaks, and that's not how God works, and all these different things. And in the moment, I was in shock. Like, I was like, what do you mean you don't hear God? And he's like, nobody hears God. And I'm like, God's always talking. Like, what do you mean you don't hear God? And that was actually my first time realizing, and that was in college. So it was a long time. I was already in my 20s that I realized that not everybody heard the voice. So yeah, that was the beginning of me understanding that I somehow was different.
And all through the period before your childhood and middle school, high school, nobody made you feel strange or weird or different for having some sort of inner compass or knowing from a higher reality?
Great question. The reality is that if it was happening, I wasn't aware of it. Let's say it like that. That doesn't mean that I wasn't having moments where I didn't feel like I belonged, or I felt different, or I felt like somehow I was seeing life differently or having emotions differently than other people. Because again, I could see beyond just what somebody would say. I could understand beyond what people were pretending, let's say. So that was always there. So again, that doesn't mean that I didn't feel moments where I felt different. But whenever I would reference, that I heard something, or I'm like, God is guiding me to do this, or it was very much either celebrated, acknowledged, or somehow understood. So when I would share it with my parents, or I would share it with my family, it would be like, oh, that's great. Okay, good. Like, but there was never like, what are you talking about, a voice? Or what do you, it was very much, I'm audibly hearing singularity, and I'm not sure what that fully means with what I'm trying to say here, but it's that whole concept that it felt very normal. Nobody ever made me feel there. I'm actually being reminded. So I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And in Puerto Rico, catecismo, it's like where you go for the Catholic classes. I don't know how you say it in English. And I would at times tell the teacher, like, well, actually, God is saying this instead. Whenever we'd read a verse or she would describe certain things, I'd be like, oh, God's saying this instead. And she would constantly tell me, oh, that's good. Keep listening to God. Keep listening, which once again, from my own filter and perception, some way, somehow, that was me also interpreting like, oh, okay, yeah, we need to continue to listen to that voice that talks to us, But same thing with my parents and all of that. It was very much acknowledged. And I think it goes back to this thing. Let's have this when we go around talking to people, right? There's so many things that are part of our nature, part of our day-to-day that we think are just normal, right? We think it's like normal. So this whole thought of like me hearing a voice, it's not like I was going around asking people, hey, do you two hear the voice? We don't walk around saying, hey, do you two see that sky? Do you two, it's like, it's one of those things that it felt very natural as breathing. And I just thought, just like we all breathe, then we all hear the voice.
I think it's beautiful, though, that you were encouraged and also that you weren't scared of it, because I can imagine, especially in today's day and age, that children would be scared, feel different, and also from family and friends, or even a nun, or not encouraged to listen to that inner knowing, that inner calling, or whatever gifts they may have.
Yes. Well, from my perspective and what I've come to learn, I do believe intuition is our first language, right? That conversation is actually our first conversation. It's like the first breath we take. It's the conversation that is taking place, through our own moment of birth. It continues throughout our life. But with the reality in the society that we are part of, or most of us are part of, because there's many cultures who cultivate this. There is this, I'm audibly hearing to say, there's this need to impose certain thoughts and like, oh, I must teach this child, or I must do this. And we haven't really cultivated this idea that there is actually something else beyond just the human voice that can teach a child or guide us into life, in a more productive way. And that being said, I think part of why I feel like I'm being inspired to share that is that we all have the language. We all have the gift. We all do. And along the way, I feel like life, for some reason, you can call it angels, you can call it God, you can call it my soul, cultivated and, let's say, curated an experience for me in which I wasn't perceiving the difference, right? But for some reason, there are children out there and there's many individuals out there who have the same gifts and have the same experiences, but life created itself on purpose to have it shut down or have it be perceived as not a good thing for some reason, because I think everything eventually always plays out in our favor. But yeah, there's a lot of kids and a lot of individuals who early on were told that that's evil or that's not good or what are you talking about? What's wrong with you? But it's also just a reflection of what the past has been and what our culture makes a priority,
So I developed my relationship with God through a 12-step program and getting sober. And within our literature, once we start getting sober, which is a big reliance on God, it actually uses a line that says, we will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. And in saying that, what would your personal definition of intuition be?
So by the way, I love that verse. I wasn't aware of that. And I also do believe that we've had that discussion, right?
Yes, we have.
That is a channeled text, that is a system that was given to truly offer, the opportunity, not just to learn the power of surrender, but really the experience of liberation. So I love all that. And I wasn't aware of that. Ask your question again. Yeah. I got lost with that whole concept of like, man, that's good. I wasn't aware of that.
100%. Yeah. So in the literature, it says, and again, this is along the journey after you've completed a certain amount of steps, it says, we will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. Right. And I wanted to ask you, what would your definition of intuition be?
Perfect. So it goes back a little bit to what I just addressed, right? That idea. And by the way, my voice is changing because that's usually a sign that the angels are speaking and wanting to communicate, and I can't control that. So that's why my voice is changing. So to me, intuition is the language of the soul, right? That is thank you, I'm audibly hearing, that's the string that connects us if you want to play it. They're showing me a vision. That the games of like you hold the cup, I'll hold a cup, and there's a string, right? And it's like we're communicating. There's a communication, but the string can be so thin that maybe we're not perceiving it, but that communication is always at play. So that to me is intuition. It's like it is that thread that connects us to something that may not always be perceived, but is always there. Something that is very much the source and I'm audibly hearing the inclination of love that truly moves through all of us, that is guiding, loving us, and really trying to serve us when we allow our human to receive the love, and the blessings that it's trying to offer us along the way. So to me, intuition is that language that we all have access to, that when we cultivate it, when we become present to it, is truly and authentically and with so much intention trying to get us to the other side, meaning trying to get us into an experience that allows us to experience the love, the joy, the blessings that are truly being offered to us day to day.
I love that. Language of the soul. So let's use myself, and then let's say I'm speaking for our audience. Somebody like yourself that is so in tune and has practiced so frequently, so often, every single day, that you have your instrument in the perfect chords and the perfect harmony. There's a bunch of us that we feel like we have this knowing, or we feel like we have this gut reaction, or we feel, and then we make a decision upon that and it doesn't turn out the way we thought. What are some tools or some ways that you guide your clients, or you guide in your retreats, or some of your seminars? What are some of the ways that we can actually develop that muscle to become greater, that we stop doubting our own intuition and stop doubting our own guts because, well, we thought this was going to happen and then this happened? And like, what are some ways that that are practical?
So I'm actually going to answer this in a way you're probably not expecting, right? And you just said something that we follow intuition and then we realize that it was a mistake or somehow it wasn't. But
we thought it was our intuition.
Yeah,
right?
we thought it was our intuition.
Yeah.
To me, it's just it's a deeper and wider question because there's so many qualities around that. Mm-hmm. We all have driving factors. We all have belief systems, and we all have reasons why we think things should be a certain way. And a lot of times when we are using our intuition is helping us, but it's also helping us maintain certain belief system, right? And what I mean by that is that, we like, okay, how do I get this to happen? I want this to happen. And our intuition, we might be like, okay, if I do this or do that, then it's going to lead me to that result. But the thing is that a lot of times those things that we're wanting are really being driven by our limited perspective and our limited beliefs and our limited awareness of ourselves and what's possible in life. And a lot of times we hear this all the time, that when we get what we think we wanted, it's not what we really wanted, right? Like then we go into regret, like, oh, like I wanted this whole time. And then you get it and it's like, crap, this is horrible. And our intuition, it comes from such a higher source that it's aware, right? It's aware of where our limitations lie as much as it's aware about what else is possible. And sometimes some of the things that we're getting, it's not that we're getting the wrong intuition, but the intuition serves a greater you, not the little you, not the you that has the belief systems. So sometimes intuition comes in such a way, or is delivered in such a way that would have you make certain decisions to help you untangle and dismantle whatever belief systems or whatever behaviors are actually limiting you and keeping you from what you are capable of experiencing. And it goes back to this whole idea of meaning. You're like, my intuition didn't work. This is not what happened. This is not what I got. But the reality is that the intuition serves a greater purpose and a greater vision that goes beyond your original vision that you thought you wanted. So some things, there is disappointment that is on the other side of what we perceive wasn't our intuition. But that disappointment is also serving us and helping us to get to a space or a place required for us to surrender what is actually guiding us in the wrong direction. Because ultimately, when we're asking for something, we're wanting for something, when we really go into the core of the why, usually we're asking to experience more joy. We're asking to experience more freedom. We're asking to experience more connection, more abundance, more, I'm audibly hearing ecstatic union with what and who we are. And a lot of times when we ask for an intuitive guidance or we're making certain things happen, again, it's only based from our limited perspective. And intuition is, again, the voice of the soul, the voice of that greater consciousness. So that it serves that above what you think you need to get. And again, something not turning out one way. It's all connected to meaning. For all you know, because you didn't get what you expected, you're not happy about it, but your soul is like, yes, this is exactly what needed to happen, right? So that it could actually lead to the catalyst or to the decision or to the behavior or to the meanings that will allow this person to become truly who they're capable of being.
I love that. So in many of our movies, which are, go ahead.
I didn't finish something. So let's, you said how do you fine tune it, right?
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to, it's not about how do I fine tune my intuition, but how do I become more available to aligning to the greater version of me? Like, how do I allow myself to align more to that greater vision that truly is going to reward me with love, with joy, with freedom, with liberation, with abundance, with ecstatic union, with that divine self, that joyful self, right? Because unconsciously, again, I'm audibly hearing, we go around pretending like, okay, this is what's going to make me happy. So we're pretending and we are moving into these decisions that are just offering us that superficial touch of pleasure and joy. But we are all deep down craving the deeper experience of fulfillment. And like, how do you fine tune your intuition is how do you fine tune your availability and your willingness to receive a life that truly is fulfilling? How do you fine tune yourself to aligning to the desire that is really yearned beyond just the superficial? Because that's true liberation. And if you could do that, then automatically you fine tune what you're receiving. Because as you get clear on that, what you will receive will guide you to that outcome.
Do you have any practical applications that you would share on that? How that you asked the question in a different way. Mm-hmm. Are there any things that you do on a daily basis or that you have your clients do on a daily basis to get to that desired soul's outcome?
So, they're showing me a vision, and I wrote this the other day. It's like so many of us go around, what's a good way to say it? So many of us go around denying ourselves the joy that we're craving. We'll say, oh no, that I'm doing this because this is what I need to do. But we go around literally every day denying ourselves the joy of the moment, the joy of the day, the joy that we can have when we spend moments with the people that we love. Like we deny ourselves, but we're convincing ourselves and pretending that no, we're doing it to create joy. We're doing it to make ourselves happy and make other people happy. But the reality is that we're pretending to be in motion of things that we think or that somehow, but we're not really honoring what I call juices us up, right? Or lights us up. So I love that. I'm audibly hearing to say it's that the challenge that the angels would invite us to step into is like, okay, spend at least 4 days and take inventory about what are the things that actually activate and juice you up in excitement. Now, what happens to our nature is that we are all going to try to do the things we've done before. Well, I know that this makes me happy. I know that if I was to do this, this is what's going to make me happy. But the reality is that those things are only maintaining the past. It's only maintaining what you think you know. It's only keeping you the same. So the best approach, if you're going to go ahead and spend 3 or 4 days taking inventory, it's like, where can I stretch myself and do something new to see what is actually juicing me up, what's actually getting me excited. So that would be about trying a new environment or spending some time in groups that you're not used to spending, taking time to maybe learn something new that you've never explored, right? But just getting outside of your normal will actually create the spaces and the opportunities for the extraordinary to meet you, which in turn helps you to experience, wow, this is really, really activating this joyful excitement. And then from there, from that state, then the next decision and the next decision can only be fueled and it'll activate more of that for life to become more of that. So I hope that all made sense.
No, it made perfect sense. And while you were describing it, I kept seeing themes in my own life where I, to become the person that I am now, I had to get uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And yet still I have my default mechanisms of what makes me happy because I think that makes me happy at the time. And therefore I don't grow because I don't go past any limitations. Mm-hmm. And you've been very instrumental in me getting into new rooms and meeting new people and new places, which has broadened my horizon and broadened the way I can see life. And yet still my default is, but this makes me happy. Yeah. So it's like, for me, it's a constant moving forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's like this constant blending rather than jumping full in.
I love that. You said something so good because they audibly are like responding to you as well. But they said something so good, which I love that a little bit of what you were saying, like stepping outside of what you know. It's like you were breaking molds of the identity, right? A lot of us, we all do actually. The reality is that all of us have a framework of who we think we are, who we've been told we are, what's possible, what we're capable of. But it doesn't come close to measuring what truly is possible, right? And they said something, it just made me giggle. So that's why I went like this idea of like, they're like, your soul here is trying to liberate you and break you free from identity, like any identity, but your human is here fighting for the limiting beliefs, limiting, perspectives, limiting behaviors that are just really maintaining your identity. That's all it's doing. The human is just trying to make sure its identity is surviving, right? Moment by moment by moment. But the reality is our soul is saying like, why are you holding on to an identity? That's your shackles. That's your prison, right? That it's the identity that really is dictating all of it. So it's like this opportunity of like, how do I get to break whatever mold has been put in place? Which the reality is everything's borrowed. Right. So most of us, we're like, yes, I'm aiming for this, or I want this out of life, but it's usually because it's been seeded somewhere along the way by a parent, by the culture, like all this idea of like, oh, this is what's going to make me happy, but it's just something we borrowed. Most of us haven't authentically gone out to explore what actually ignites our joy and our passion, our desire. We've just borrowed and continue to replicate or explore what we've been told or what we've been shown.
So in that, first off, thank you, right? But I'm trying to think about the audience watching this, right? Yeah. So let's say it's a father or a mother, and they have a lot of responsibilities, and they have a lot of things that are musts. They are musts, or a child will not, there's going to be a sacrifice, and how can they step out into the unknown, step out into this, what will make them happy, what will bring them bliss, what will expand their soul, while also staying in the here and now, responsible of taking care of little ones?
So great question. And it's interesting because you said, there will be sacrifice, and the voice said, but why does there have to be? It's just the perception of, it's like even that thought is very limiting, right? Like the thought in anywhere, the belief, like there must be a sacrifice somewhere. But why? You can choose to have a sacrifice or create a sacrifice or create the illusion or the idea that you must sacrifice somewhere, which inevitably is not necessarily life-giving, right? Sacrifice is what? Sacrifice is death.
Okay.
So the idea that you must sacrifice somewhere, you must die somewhere, or something must die, right? You must choose death over life. Like even that has its limitations. I just have to honor that's what.
No. It's good. It's languaging.
But I think that if we were to play with that, right, instead of looking at it as sacrifice, it's like, oh wow, I get to stretch. I get to explore what else is possible with these dynamics in my life, with these blessings in my life, right? Because for some reason and on some level, like you're saying, a father and a mother with a child, like you or other people may see it as like, oh, I'm gonna sacrifice my joy and my pleasure to take care of this. Well, how about why not explore the thought that your pleasure gets to include this? Your joyful exploration gets to include this. And I think that when we open up, they're audibly saying the oyster, right? When we open up the oyster, it widens, right? So there's so many more options available to us to explore what can be done. A lot of times, I remember they're flashing really quick a vision of a woman who I was doing a session with. And she had this fear of having children. She's like, I can't have children, and I just can't imagine a life with kids because that would limit my travel. That would limit, she was an investor. She was doing great with life. She traveled a lot. She had a very life full of play, right? And she was scared. She's like, okay, well, if I have children, with my partner, I'm not going to be able to do this. And I shared with her, well, it sounds like you have a belief that having children would take away from that. What if you were to embrace a belief that your children will add to that, right? That they will add more colors to your adventures. They will add more vibrancy, more childlike exploration in your adventures. Like what if, right? What if that was also part of the plan? So in this process, what the angels did is that they really helped her to create a new framework. And not even a framework like, okay, let's go find a new identity. No, like create a framework that has less limitations and less expectations about what joy and pleasure actually looks like, and be more open, right? In this state, what I call the state of innocence, we've been born with innocence. We've been born with the gift of awe and the wonder, right? And it's like that, like when things move in our journey and in our life, we are unintentionally and unconsciously trying to put it under certain rules. Well, for example, if I have kids, the rules are and the expectations is that I must become a stay-at-home mom, right? Because she saw that in her family. She saw it in movies. Like that's the idea. Like when you have kids, you have to like anchor down. You got to slow down. You can't continue all of this because you have responsibilities. And the reality is that that was just the expectations and the illusion. But there's also a lot of people out there, and I brought up my cousin with her. I have a cousin who her and her husband literally travel everywhere, and the kids are everywhere. Like they travel everywhere, and they're such a beautiful, thriving family. They're constantly having fun. They're constantly exploring. And when they want that time alone, they also can afford a nanny who helps them with that, right? So they've chosen the path of freedom, when our culture, or most humans, most Americans, let's say, right, portray this concept that when you have kids, you lose freedom. So of course, inevitably, that's what you're going to create in your family dynamic. So anywho, your question was, what happens when you have to sacrifice, you have kids? Well, it's about designing what is the lifestyle you want to have. What is the lifestyle you want to have? Because regardless of the lifestyle you want to have, there's always room to make it all work. There's always room. One of the things that angels would always say to me is that there's always a way. There's always a way. If it's been seeded, it's been given. So if you've been seeded a lifestyle that has all of this exploration, then it can include all these other dynamics that are part of it, as long as you're willing to be open to stretch and created.
I love that.
I mean, for me, going back even to my own personal life, I have a daughter who's fully disabled, right? And I feel, now I'm not at the capacity that I want to, I'm working on it, right? Even more exploration, but I feel very blessed. I've traveled, I explore, I play, and it includes all of it. I've been able to design a life that has allowed me that freedom. But there was a very long time where I was like, there's no way I can travel. I can't do any of this. And it literally took time I had to take time with my own belief systems and become available to looking at life differently. And the irony is that once I did that, my daughter's health got better, opportunities expanded. I was able to grow my business in a different way. And literally the ways became available for me to enjoy the freedom.
That's good for people to hear. Mm-hmm. And it's good for me to hear, no matter how well I know you. So one of the things that I'm going to rewind real fast, and I'm seeding this on purpose because I know the story, but in every hero's movie, right? So doesn't matter which one we bring up, but if you want to say Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, or Superman, or Batman, or you can bring it up, or you can bring up Disney movies. There's always this time in the hero's adventure where they kind of know who they are. They're getting a real foundation of why they're here. And then it almost seems like their powers are taken away from them for a bit. And they have to climb another hurdle or face another fear before they can really embody the actual hero that we get to know, right? And it's played out over and over and over again. Has this ever happened to you with your gift?
Definitely. I mean, I think the illusion sometimes is that it only happens once in a lifetime, but there's micro doses of it throughout our lifetime. You know, we tend to have like a macro one, but I think, thank you. What I'm audibly hearing is in the concept too of this hero's journey is that it's really about being guided through life. Life loves us so much that it guides us through this continual opportunity for expansion for us to once again break free from the identities, right? So I would say it's funny because I feel like I've had several. I was going to go ahead and start with my daughter, you know, with her disability. But like, I remember one before that, right? You know, I was doing amazing in college. I was blessed with the opportunity to be a human resource director for a company. I literally was offered great pay, great opportunity to travel with this company and open different locations. And I was going to go ahead and do my, you know, what I wanted to do when it came to serving kids and camps and all. Like, I literally felt like everything had fallen into place, right? And I remember leaving work and I'm driving, feeling ecstatic, feeling amazing. And then the voice says, you are to get married, become a stay-at-home mom, and then you will be doing what you came here to do. And that was heartbreaking, right? And the voice came, like I like to describe it, sounds like thunder. So another thing, and I'm adding things along the way as I'm sharing, but so anytime I hear guidance and thunder, there's nothing I can do to change it. There's nothing I can do. But I also know that sometimes guidance and intuition and things come through that are only given so that then I can decide, am I wanting that outcome or do I want another outcome? And it's malleable. I can change my thoughts, my behavior, and create something else or welcome it. So when it comes in thunder, I can't change it. Like, this is just what it is. And I have to understand that it's part of the bigger plan. So I'm driving and the voice says that as thunder. And I remember I got so angry, right? It's like I felt like, I'm stuck. You know, I went through that and it was a very short journey, right? I think that's another thing. Hero's journey can take one day. That whole cycle, or it could take a lifetime if we're not moving through it, or it could take a month, or who knows. But I had that moment, and it was also the opportunity that became my catalyst to fine-tuning not just my gifts, but understanding the bigger picture, right? Because it did end up where I ended up getting married and being a stay-at-home mom. And then once I thought I had the hang of it, I had my new expectations about what life was going to be, you know, what needed to happen. And then my daughter was born, you know, with a lot of medical challenges. And it was during that time that I went into mama bear mode, right? It's like, I have to save my daughter. But her medical disabilities and medical experiences were so extreme. Like, we spent most of our time in the hospital. And it was a constant, literally daily prayer, begging for her survival. Like, every day, is she going to make it till tomorrow? And during that phase and during that time, my human went into what I call the survival stage. And when you go into survival, which happens to all of us, when we go into survival, our brain works different. Our intuition, our ability to access the intuitive voice becomes a little jaded. You know, it becomes a little hard to hear because the human gets louder about its fears and like, I must survive. I must make it to the next day. So during that time is where I went through what you would say the dark night of the soul, but then it was many, many nights, but it's like the whole idea. It's like where I went through what I call the forgetting. I went through a phase in my life in which I didn't hear the voice. I felt alone. I felt God had abandoned me. I felt that there was no way out, you know, things can't get better. And I had a really, really hard time. And through that process, because I tend to be very optimistic, even then, I was like, okay, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. I started referencing a lot of the things that the angels taught me early on. There's always a way. And in that process of leaning in and trusting that there would be a way, I pretty much started going into my training once again. I started training my human to start fine-tuning my own experience of the voice, my own experience of intuition. Somewhere along the way, I decided this is the only way I can save my daughter. So it wasn't even about myself. Like, this is the only way I can save my daughter, is to find that voice once again. So I made that decision.
Okay.
I made that decision that the only way she was going to survive is if I got my gifts back, if I got back access to the voice. And I went through literally fasting. I was going through like revivals. I was going through everything that I knew, right, to get the voice back. And it was working. It was working. But then I started to stretch myself and started expanding more into like, what else is possible, right? Beyond the structure that I know within Christianity and things like that. I started looking at Reiki and all these different modalities that will help somehow cure my daughter. That was my mission. That was my vision. And that was my plan. And in that process, as I went through this journey of discovery and also taking moments and time to just quiet my fear, quiet my shadows, let's call it, I really went into this phase and through this stage of really taking time to making remembering a must. Going back to what I knew was so true, which is the fact that, again, everything has a reason. Everything happens on purpose. Everything, one of the things I would say all the time, I was taught early on by the angels that everything changes. So I held on to that concept that everything changes, and I'm choosing and inviting for this to change in my favor, to change in favor of my daughter's life. So I went into that discovery. And through that, I went into what I call the training once again. I had an angel, and what most people know as a master, show up one day or one evening, woke me up in the middle of the night. And I was invited to explore if I wanted to experience euphoria or complacency. And by this time, my gifts were already coming back, and things were coming back online, what I would say. And I said euphoria. And from there, the voice and the guidance was, well, you're going to be going into training for a year. And during that year, every day I would take time to be in classroom, let's say, with my angels. And I went into this intentional time and space in which I just surrendered into the learning. And during that time, these beings, all sorts of beings, started showing up. Beings I've never seen before started showing up. Things started showing up that was unlike what I've ever experienced before, or at least my human, right, had perceived before. And during that time, I got taught how to train humans, how to train our human to be able to hear, see, feel, and manifest what we call spirit, what we call consciousness, what we call soul.
So I feel that this is a really exciting time for you, and I'm going to explain why. Mm-hmm. So there are things that are going on that I even believe 5 years ago, as early as 5 years ago, but definitely 10 or 15 would have separated us in a very, very big way. Mm-hmm. Okay. But now there are congressional hearings almost on the daily about UFOs. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who you know, and teaches about meditation and changing a new identity, and has these healings that once upon a time in Catholicism or Christianity or maybe even old school Judaism would have felt like devil worship or sin or dark sorcery, is now meeting with the Catholic Church. Okay. And there is a blend of where there used to be New Age, spiritual, religious, sci-fi, typical here and now, earthbound. Something's happening where everything is coming together. And I feel as if you were put on this earth maybe for this time, because I'm looking back even in my own upbringing, in my own history, where people could be very scared of somebody with gifts, or they could just be very scared, period. There's actually, the fear was already there, but then you add the story to it. And now it's just a black and white type thinking. And there's no more black. Well, the black and white may still be there on the perimeter, but there's a gray that's happening. There's a big blend. And I was wondering if you're seeing that in your own life. Like, do you experience that, or do you just stay in your own lane and allow things to just unfold?
I think I'm understanding the question. I mean, I was born for these times for sure, but I also think all of us were, I really think that all of us, whatever you want to call it, whether it's God, soul, source, creator, infinite intelligence, consciousness, it was very intentional with each of us being here at this time. And I think that all of us have an opportunity to, I'm audibly hearing the roots, to go to our roots, our source, our roots, our who and what we came from, or who and what we came for. It's really, all of us are here on purpose in amazing times. And deep down inside, it's like, I talk about this in my community, in my group. It's like all of us are like at the edge of our seats, excited. It's like, yes, like all this is happening. This is exactly why we came at this time. And I also think that it's interesting, right? Because, and believe me, I've been in this duality and the concept of like, can it be stopped? Can it be slowed down? Can influences keep this from happening? Like all these different things. But there's consciousness, and the evolution of consciousness can never be stopped, right? It can never be stopped. And the framework that we have been living under has had its own agenda. And that framework is shifting and let's say collapsing or morphing or changing, because we all need to be able to come. It's not that we're all being guided with consciousness to come into a place where we create an even plane where we can see more, not the same, but at least be more open to understanding each other. And I do agree, 5 years ago, it was so different compared to now. Also, almost 5 years ago in 2019, I had a group of beings, light beings, show up and said that humanity has been granted a new permission to see more, to experience more, to understand more, to be able to create more, right? To be more in the awareness of understanding beyond what we've ever known before. So we are definitely in that time. And I know that I personally have gotten guidance, and also many other teachers have gotten guidance about even just the next 2 years, and this being a very significant time of us truly, truly stepping into a place where we really remember. There's a lot of distortion that's been happening for a very long time that has had us forgetting our nature. And it's exciting to be at a time in humanity in which we can see each other more clearly, but also understand that we were never designed to be as rigid and as judgmental as we were told. And I don't even know if that's answering the question that you brought up.
It was, it was answering the question, and it was also more of it was building a bridge between us. That if you were experiencing and witnessing that, and if you were noticing these type of blendings that are happening, and these types of awarenesses in a way, because I was born in 1976. Okay. And through many modalities and philosophies, and there was, I can just remember thinking there are no UFOs, or if anyone says they hear the voice of God, they're crazy, or you just hear these things growing up, and it just shuts you down. Even when you go out as a kid and you look at it under all the stars and you go, how is that possible? But you're told so frequently, so you start believing what you're told over and over and over again. And if you were raised in a way that I was, I could just imagine that this would be a very exciting time because there's more of an acceptance and an acknowledgement that there are powers and senses that people have that are far beyond we believed were possible.
Yes. Yes. And I'm audibly hearing too, it's like our languaging is expanding. You know, we get into conversations on languaging.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
But I did audibly just hear that. It's like this concept that our language is expanding. You know, I from my experience, like I grew up Catholic. I went into Christianity, fully into Christianity, meaning like I went on mission trips. I read the Bible. I would, it was very much my ideology. But within everything, within all this context, like even beyond that, it's all been really the same thing, just a different use of language, you know. And for example, you know, in Catholicism and even Christianity, the Holy Spirit, you know, that was the language, the Holy Spirit. Well, you may talk to somebody else and they may call it higher consciousness. Some people may call it beings. So, you know, it's like this whole, the language.
One time it was the Holy Ghost.
The Holy Ghost, yes. Yeah. But it's like the languaging is expanding. And we're just gaining, I'm audibly hearing, it's like we are all gaining more perspectives. So it's like when we hear these things in Congress and about aliens and UFOs and all that, we're gaining more opportunities to give experiences a different language and a different view of what the source could be, you know, which ultimately it's helping us to come back into this idea that the source of it all is actually much greater than what we could ever understand.
Jesus said, in my Father's house, there's many mansions.
Yes.
So Emily Rivera, what exciting projects do you have coming up? What would you like to share with the audience?
So I am really, really, really loving what I get to do with women inside the Sacred Garden. And that is a beautiful community in which the angels really have been guiding and helping us to understand why our soul, our consciousness chose a woman's body. And how inside the women's physicality, there is certain access to anointing and consciousness and realities and possibilities that are not necessarily available in the structure of a man's body. And it's not that a woman is more than a man, not at all. It's that on purpose, our souls chose our physicality, our avatar. And I've really been blessed with the opportunity to help guide women into understanding and remembering why their soul chose their bodies and how to turn that part of themselves on. And I'm not talking about the turn on and the whole idea, but it can include that and it does include that. But it's this idea that we in this physicality as women have access to what I call, or what they are calling it, the feminine code. And that the feminine code has 7 aspects to it. And when we as women unlock it, we become, unstoppable in the sense that euphoria becomes inevitable. Joy and play becomes our day interaction. We become very anointed with our hearing, with our experiences, with our intuition. We become great healers. We also become the great lovers of not just the self, but of everyone. You know, we step into a place in which they're audibly saying there's no borders, in the feminine. And eventually I'll go into getting a chance to talk also around the masculine and why the soul chose a man's body and the codes contained in that. But that's what's got me super excited right now, really teaching and guiding women through that.
So the Sacred Garden, the feminine codes.
Yes.
Is there anything else coming up or anything that you're working on that's really exciting you right now?
So I am working on my book, which you're aware of. So that's going to be really wonderful when that aligns and that gets to be shared with the world, just because it's going to literally be teaching and talking about the awakened superhuman framework and how in a very beautiful way we are all superhumans. And what the intention is within that conversation is that we are more than human. We're more than these physical bodies. We're more than our history. We're more than our stories. We are more. And we're all superhumans, but there are many of us who are being born awakened superhumans, that we have access to more of the understanding of what life is really about, and we're part of a bigger movement. So it's what I'm working on right now, and I cannot wait to get that out there.
Okay, and where can people find you?
So they can find me at theangelcoach.com, but also the best way to continue this conversation would be in my social. So ideally Instagram. I have TikTok, of course, and Facebook, but Instagram is a great spot to continue the conversation, and it's at theangelcoach.com. At the Angel Coach.
Okay. And for anyone that hasn't been able to pick up on it, I fell madly in love with you almost 4 years ago. And one of the things that I would want to share with the audience that I have told you many times, especially during our ups and downs, is aside from gifts and spirituality and stretching ourselves and beliefs, the thing that inspires me the most is how you see life and how you experience life, and how, you could see a butterfly or a lizard, or you could just get excited at something that to me seems so minimal. And I always realize, where did I lose the joy? Where did I lose the happiness? Where did I lose the excitement? And there's a part even in the Bible where Jesus explains the way into heaven is to be childlike, is to have the heart of a child, and that you exhibit that to me all the time. And I always wake up to the idea that I have grown into this Rocky Balboa, fuck you, me versus the world, a guy that doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve me. And it makes me, it's not that it's not healthy not to have an alpha within me or a protector in me, but it does rob a lot of the joy. And when I'm around you, I just see all of the blessings in life. And I don't think anybody could get a better compliment to that. If anyone ever told me that, I would be like, man, because that's what people want. You have great awareness and emotional control, and you just see the blessings and the joys and the possibilities in things that most people would find very hard, very difficult, and very limiting. And that frees me up to open my mind.
Thank you, baby.
All right.
Love you.
I love you too.
Love you.
I love
I'm
you
also
too.
madly.
Yeah.